Hey guys, Corey Poirier here. Welcome to Blue Talks, and I hope you enjoy this video.
I listen to that and it's like, my goodness, that's me. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome. I love being at the University of Toronto. It actually brings a bit of nostalgia because I used to live in the city years and years and years ago. So much has changed since then. So flying has taken me to incredible places, but the real journey was becoming the woman who dared to take off. Today, I get to live a life that I absolutely love. I fly airplanes across continents, from Canada up to Greenland and Iceland and Scotland, and I've taken one airplane all the way to India. And I scuba dive, I sing, I live on properties where I literally walk out of my house, get to the hangar, pull my airplane out and take off because it's on a runway. I have a family that I cherish. I have a almost 20-year-old son and a 25-year-old stepdaughter. I'm so happy to say that I'm actually close to them, which is really good. I have a wonderful relationship with my husband, who actually brought me back to flying when we met 13 years ago. And I'm really just grateful every single day. I have my moments, like all of us, but I am really grateful for the life that I live. But the life that I just described didn't happen by accident. And it certainly didn't happen because it was encouraged. To understand how I got here, you need to know where I started. I come from a traditional French family, not French-Canadian, French from France. And if anybody knows what a traditional French family means as if you're a girl, the expectations are you find a wealthy guy, ideally, you get married, you have a bunch of kids, you're a wonderful housewife, you know how to cook really well, you know how to entertain, and you don't try to do anything else. You don't go to school, you don't fly, you don't ride motorcycles, you don't scuba dive, basically everything I wanted to do. So every time I wanted to do something that was not for girls, I was told you can't do that. So in a life where everything felt forbidden, I desperately needed to see someone, anyone who lived differently, and ideally a woman. And that person appeared when I was 8 years old. Her name is Colette. Colette was my great aunt. And her last name is Duval. And if you ever Google Colette Duval, you will find out that Colette Duval was a stunt woman, an author, a comedian, but she was mainly a skydiver. And she beat the world record that she still detains, even though she passed away years ago, because she literally jumped out of an airplane at 34,000 feet and opened her parachute at 800 feet. So she did a free dive for close to over 33,000 feet. And she survived and didn't even break a bone. And she was my hero. I grew up and I thought, this woman is unbelievable. She's just the best. But she didn't just live boldly, she documented it. And years later, that book would come back into my life in the most unexpected way. The first time I read her book, I found it in my grandparents' library. And I thought it was interesting. I continued feeling limited, though, in my own life choices. So here's the funny thing. When I first read her book, I was in my early 20s. Nothing really happened. But sometimes a message arrives before we're ready for it. So then I spent the next 20 years living my life, many jobs. Actually, to this day, I have now completed my 38th type of job that I've done. Some people would look at my resume and going, oh, we're not hiring her. She's going to leave in 2 weeks. But I'm pretty proud of that. It was just attempts to finding out my path. But I still felt disconnected from my dream. So I spent almost 20 years trying to find my place. And I jumped from the film industry to being an administrative assistant to I even became a dog groomer at some point in Spain. I just tried a bunch of stuff to see where my passion would be. But I never quite dared to live the life that I really, really wanted. And that's why when I reread my aunt's book in my 40s, it hit me really deeply. I found it after my grandmother had passed away. And by then it was mine to keep. And I remember I sat in my bed and this book was sitting next to it. And I was, going through boxes and stuff. And I was like, okay, I got to read this book. And I'm like, I read it before. Yeah, but I don't know. It like, when something draws you to like do something and you don't get why, but all of a sudden you just pick it up. Well, I did. When I picked it up, it was like 9:00 at night. I did not sleep. I read the book the whole night. Like I could not put it down until dawn, until I finished it, which happened to be like 6 a.m. And I cried like every 2 pages. At one point, I was crying so bad that I couldn't read the pages. And I was like, you got to stop crying because you can't read this thing. And I didn't know why I was crying because I didn't feel sad. I was just super emotional. And I realized that I was crying because I was dying to live my story. And so those tears were not sadness. They were recognition. I wasn't just reading her story. I was remembering mine. The one I had buried under everybody else's expectations. And so the awakening began. And I said, you know what? I'm going back to flying. Because when I was 18, I had started flying. I had taken classes to learn to be a paraglider. Anybody know what a paraglider is? It's the craziest form of flying. You jump off a cliff with no engine, with a soft wing over your head, and you just jump, and then you hop and you hope to God like it's going to work. You don't start off like that. You start on a little mogul. But you get there. And I got my license in Spain, in Guadalajara, right outside of Madrid. And I got my license when I was like 19, and my mom found out. And of course, she's like, you're not doing that anymore. So I quit. So now, here we are, many, many, many years later. And I had just read my aunt's book, and I said, this time I'm doing it. This time I'm doing what really, really, really gets me going. And I finally had a clear sense of direction. I finally had that permission inside my heart to pursue my life. And so that night, I realized that her story wasn't telling me to be her. It was telling me to become the woman I was meant to be. And so I became part of the 6%. Yes, there's only 6% of pilots who are women. It's a membership that is not status-based. It's not who you know. It's not even how much money you have. It's effort-based. And I can tell you, it's a lot of effort. And most of the time, you're the only woman in the room. You go to a flight school, there's one of you and 25 guys. And it's fine. But it just kind of gets really weird because eventually you want to speak to somebody else who kind of has the same built than you do, and you get lonely. But you push through each challenge because you know what? This is what I want to do. And being part of that 6% is not glamorous. It's challenging. And to survive, let alone thrive, you need tools. And so when you learn to fly, you need, as far as I'm concerned, 3 ingredients. And I'm taking this, and he knows from my husband, because he's the one who taught me those 3 ingredients, because he's been flying forever. I always told him, you must have come out of your mom's womb when you were flying. There's no way. He's been flying for as long as he could think of flying. And it became my framework. It's the 3 Ps. So if you want to write that down, you can. The first P is passion. Without passion, you would give up. No matter what you want to do. No passion, you're just going to do it just to do it, And flying is hard. In this case, flying is hard. And I even had an instructor recently who said to me, if anything that is worth doing is difficult, and if it were easy, everybody would do it. So flying is hard, and that passion fuels the journey. The second P is perseverance. Every single license that Annie just mentioned, where it was like my first license was my glider license, and then my second was my private license, and then I did my commercial, and I did my instrument. Before that, I did a night rating. Every single rating and license I did was just harder than the last. And I kept thinking, man, does it ever get easier? But it doesn't. So I persevered because I wanted all those licenses. I had tons of moments of doubt. Tons of moments where I was like, I'm just not doing it. I'll just let it go. And then I would be like, no, I can't. I can't live my life not flying. Now that I know what it is, I can't. So I kept going. Not because it was easy, but because this is what I wanted. This is what I really wanted deep down. And the third P was patience, but not patience with others or patience with the licenses, patience with myself. And I know some guys are impatient too with themselves, but usually it's a woman thing. We're like really impatient with ourselves. Like we're never good enough. It's never fast enough. It's never like we're never perfect enough. It's like, stop. And actually, it almost cost me my commercial license recently, where the chief flight instructor had to say, Sandrine, will you stop? Will you just stop being so rough with yourself, because you're going to flunk? And so that patience comes with stopping to criticize ourselves so harshly. We don't get something right, it's okay. We make a mistake, that's okay too. And so impatience kills the dreams. Treating yourself kindly keeps the dream alive. These 3 Ps didn't just help me become a pilot. They helped me build a life that once seemed impossible. I lived a life I wasn't supposed to live, but I created it anyway. Your dreams are possible too, no matter what your background is or where you're starting from. All you need are the 3 Ps. If you choose passion, if you persevere, and if you show yourself patience, your dreams don't just stay dreams, they become your life. Thank you very much.